Hello and welcome to this video, and on this video I will be ranking the films of James Bond from the 10th greatest film to the first greatest film. In fact, I won't be doing it. Mr. Tim BOWNESS will be doing it, the progressive rock musician, one half of No Man, and a friend of myself and the channel. Now, if you're wondering why I am reviewing films and not talking about music, it's because this is quite a special episode, because what you're about to see is actually an excerpt from a much longer video where I have, with the help of Tim, when I say help, he did virtually all of it, ranked the films of James Bond, all of them. This is a huge, epic 2-hour video, and that's on my other channel. I have 3 channels. And the one I want to prod you towards today is my channel called The Magic Box. And on that channel, I look at film, television, and art. I haven't told anyone about it really because I wanted there to be some reasonable content on there before I started to tell the world about it. But I feel I've got some interesting videos on there. There's some videos on Star Wars, Harry Potter. I've got a ranking of the films of David Lean. I have a discussion about Alfred Hitchcock. I've ranked all the Carry On films, all 30 films, and I enjoy doing that very much. And you will be able to see the full version from which this video has been taken. So if you enjoy this video where we look at the top 10, then why not nip over to the Magic Box. Link is on screen now and in the description for this video as well. So nip over there, like and subscribe. And I must add one more thing before we get into this video with Tim, is that I will only be releasing 1 video a week. So this is a channel where I wanted to spend a little bit more time getting the stuff together, because a lot of the stuff on my main channels is produced very, very quickly. So if this all sounds interesting to you and you like my slightly surrealistic, slightly philosophical, slightly humorous approach to music, and you like to see how that works when applied to film, television and art, then get over there now, but not before you've watched this video. Watch this one first and then get over there at the end. So are you ready to go? I think we're ready to go. Okay then. So thank you, Mr. Tim BOWNESS, for helping me out. And here I am in my studio ranking the albums of James Bond.
And I think this top 11 would be, this top 10, I don't know, is there anything I'd take out of here? Yes, there's one I'd take out of here.
Okay.
Definitely.
So this is from Russia With Love.
Yeah.
This is where they get things right. Okay. This is where suddenly the style comes in. It has the long intro, a great intro with Robert Shaw seemingly assassinating Bond. It's atmospheric. It's superbly done. It's convincing. So a great opening sequence. You have a lot of the tricks of the Bond, the gun to the camera, the music, the opening credits that become more and more elongated as the series goes on. But at this stage, they're again defining the 60s. It's a very stylish film. It's a very good film. It's got Olga Klebb and her dagger shoe, which is a superb device.
Yes, brilliant.
And she's a great villain. It's got the slightly dated gypsy caravan aspect to it, which unfortunately there's no Django Reinhardt in there. But yeah, it's a good Bond, and this is where you think they've got it together. They're coming together. Something's going to happen with this. To me, it's a bit like, maybe it's like Echoes by Pink Floyd. If you want to drag this into your musical channel, they're getting all the pieces together. But wait a minute, we're going to get it really right on the next film or the next album, which is Dark Side of the Moon.
I think this is the second Bond film, isn't it? So we've had Dr. No in 62, and Dr. No has just blown everybody away. This is where it all begins. And although they get it right, so I've got a little tickle up my nose the whole time. Although they get it right, I'm trying not to sneeze. Well, I'll try this a third time now. Although they get it right, when you watch Dr. No, there's great big things missing from it, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's like some of the music and some of the things that Bond does and some of the things he wears. And there's things where they get it absolutely smack on right. But it's not quite right. And then we go to this one, and I still don't think they've got it quite right, because the thing with this one is all these Bond things come in, but I always felt this was like the Bond film for grown-ups.
Yeah.
The story doesn't actually pack a punch in the end. It's much more of a... There's no real climax. There's no lair or any of that, is there? There's just them sort of solving it and getting out. And the gypsy scene seems to be a throwback to sort of 1940s or 50s spy movies. So I still don't think they've got it right. It hasn't got that outlandishness. There's a few things. I remember the bit with the Anita Ekberg poster, and someone gets stuck in the mouth. It's very that's the sequence I remember of going, well, that's proper Bond there.
Well, for me, the intro is one of the strong Bonds, because at that point in the series as well, it must have been quite shocking that your main character gets convincingly killed as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could never love it in the way other people do.
No.
I really like it and think it's a really good film, and I can see how it moves Bond on.
But as a kid, I can remember that one would come on, and I'd sit there and I'd think, well, Mum and Dad like this, but, you know, where's the car? Where's the ejector seat, you know?
Where is the ejector seat?
Yeah, there's no ejector seat.
There is no ejector seat.
Where's the great big lair, you know?
I mean, all right, a dagger in your shoe, that's a nice idea. You know, clearly we all tried to make one.
Yeah, but you're getting beaten up by an old lady at that point, isn't she? But she is nasty, though, I'll give it that. I thought she was terrifying. That fight sequence is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. You're right there.
Strong sequences. That's one of the most memorable elements of it. So above that, I've got Dr. No, which is the opening Bond film. Yeah,
it's an absolutely brilliant classic film. We are in classic film territory, but like I said, there's bits missing from it.
The music's not quite right at this stage.
Is John Barry on this one at all? Or was he wasn't on it straight away, was he? And then they brought him in later.
Yeah.
So you've got the Monty Norman theme, haven't you?
He's in there. I think he arranges it.
Yeah.
But I don't think a lot of the score is him. I think he's given control after From Russia with Love. On this, he's partly doing it. But you've got the Three Blind Mice theme that's running through it. And there are quite a number of Caribbean tunes that run through it. It's a more generic soundtrack for a groundbreaking film. I mean, what this is, it's the birth of spy-fi, because there are science fiction elements. This must have been dazzling in 1962. The books have been a success. This comes in. Connery's a relative unknown, and he's magnetic from the first scene he's in.
It's that scene in the casino at the start, and it zooms in on him. Has got to be one of the most iconic scenes in cinema history, up there with the shower scene from Psycho or the Odessa Steps, from Battleship Potemkin. It really is. You see the 20th century cinema. That's incredible. I like the tarantula bit when I was a kid. I like the fact when he's snogging some woman and then he kills her because he uses her as a shield.
Yeah,
and that's what I mean about that. People must have gone, oh my god.
But it's so stylishly designed. Again, I hope I've got his name right, Ken Adam. The underground lair was unlike anything.
The lair's incredible, and when they go, and also Dr. No is a brilliant villain.
Yeah,
Ursula Andress is perhaps the greatest Bond girl.
She's fantastic. Again, the opening scene.
The Venus coming out of the sea sequences,
and there are the sci-fi elements, the technology elements that would have been so unusual for it is John le Carré meets dystopian sci-fi in some ways.
And also, of course, that final, the final sequence in the lair is really informing Carry On Spying, because that's spoofing that. Of course, they're doing The Third Man earlier on, and then they go to this. So, which I think was, the Carry On films, to bring them together, this is where they sort of start, don't they? You've got these British franchises emerging, and then you've got Carry On Sergeant, Carry On Nurse, and then in the early 60s Bond would come out and you get Carry On Spy, and Barbara Windsor appears, and suddenly they both grow out of this same thing for me, and sort of they define two aspects of British culture, and they're both leading the way through the 60s, and then they can't keep up with the 70s.
No, I think you're entirely right there. And what's interesting with this, having rewatched Casino Royale recently, you see that they partly use this as a template, because even the way in which Daniel Craig dresses, for the first quarter, a third of a film, he's quite casual. He's in Barbados. He's wearing casual outfits, which Connery does in this. He's not quite... I mean, okay, you've got the casino sequence, but he's not quite got the Bond in every scene look.
Well, I will give you my theory now of where the Bonds went wrong. And this comes from my brother, who's a massive James Bond fan. And he felt that the James Bond film should have stayed in the 1960s. That it was a 1960s setting and it should have stayed in the 1960s. And as we go on, what we're describing on this list is basically, they go into the 70s and Bond's going, well, I'm an anachronism now, and you get to see it. And then after that, it never quite makes sense. And and when you go to the Daniel Craig reboot, it's not set in the 60s, but it almost has the feel that they've gone back to the 60s. And you also see Mission Impossible sort of goes back to the 1960s, even though it's not the 1960s, you know. If you think of The Spy Who Shagged Me, right? If you're using that as a measurement, he starts in the 60s, and then they bring him up to date, and he's an anachronism. Or Bond, it's because Bond would be the same. As soon as you drop James Bond in the modern world, he's like, what the hell's going on? I can't work with this.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? And I think that's what you've got, and this is why this is so great. Even though all the elements aren't there with Dr. No, it's 1962 for me is the year where everything flips over. You've got Lady Chatterley's Lover.
The Beatles.
You've got the Beatles, you've got Dylan's first album, and then Dylan's second album. You can almost track those through the Bonds, and when you get to the third album of Dylan and he starts going electric, or the fourth, or whatever it is, we're probably round about Goldfinger. And all of that is happening. You can see that move up to 1965. There's this huge shift in culture, and the Bonds are just smack in the middle. And there's everything's there, right down to electric guitars.
There's a Philip Larkin poem about this that mentions, I think the Beatles mentions Chatterley's Lover. You're right, there's a cultural shift, and this is a major part of it. And it's kind of interesting, isn't it, that it's in Britain. It's a global cultural shift, and it's partly defined by quite eccentric British output with the Beatles and Bond.
And so it's like, you know, we've gone through the Second World War, we've gone through rationing, we've had to give the whole empire away, they were right on our knees, and then we start climbing out, and you get to the 1960s and that generation goes, no, we're not having it, we want something else, and they look for something else, and they see it in all these characters, and James Bond is iconic in that cultural history, absolutely iconic. Until this day he still represents something, but we can't quite grab hold of it anymore because it's unmitigated danger. He's chatted up Ursula Andress on that beach. Then some bloke comes and he just picks that thing, bang, and shoots a guy. He's got a licence to kill. Think about that. This guy has been let off by the Queen. He can do what he wants. I mean, I used to think, what's the licence to kill? That means he can go down the chip shop and just shoot the bloke. The police turn up.
Would you like a licence to kill?
No man should have a licence to kill.
So I'm just wondering, musicians you've worked with, halfway through the song.
You know, it's like if you think of even a Hitchcock film with Cary Grant, you know, and all that thing, all the stuff with all the mess. But those guys are moral. And they're right, and they've been wrong, and they're trying to...
Here's the thing, if there's a precedent, you're right, there's a slight Third Man, because The Third Man is an astonishing film. And you can see they've got that in mind. And they've also got, because Hitchcock was at the top of his game in the late 50s, early 60s, arguably his greatest run of films. And I think, you know, North by Northwest in particular with Cary Grant and Vertigo.
It's a prototype, that's why I bring it in. It's a prototype for Bond.
And they get it right, because I think with those films, I mean, they're masterpieces. I'd also add The Birds to that as well. And Marnie is exceptional. And it's partly because Bernard Herrmann's work and Hitchcock's direction are in lockstep. They are so perfectly aligned.
But what Hitchcock does is he takes the hero, and we know the hero is a goodie, but no one else knows. He's the baddie for everybody else.
He's always the wrong man.
And so often the way through that is by the dodgy seduction of a woman. Usually something that we would see as being very bad, like he gets chained to someone and then he has to force them to go to stay in a room with them and he's touching their leg and all that type of thing. That is what Hitchcock does with it. With Bond, it's now he can just do these things. He's going to do those things, you know.
They made the right choice, because I think we can say the people who could have been Bond, Fleming, I think, visualised Cary Grant. And Cary Grant was, I think, offered this. You know, people, this I think Cary Grant was offered it, David Niven was offered it. Both of them said they didn't want to do a series of films and they felt they were a little too old for it. Rex Harrison was offered it, unbelievably. And in the end, in going for someone like Connery, he's just the right face, because on one level, this film, it fits in my Academy of the Underrated. And if you don't know what my Academy of the Underrated is this, that you take for granted things that are successful, and people now go, oh, those films, they're just shit commercial pieces of work. But actually, or bands, and I always maintain that, let's say, a band like Thin Lizzy or a band like Yes, on their very first albums, if they never did anything other than that, they'd be seen as classics of their era, either experimental blues singer-songwriter in Thin Lizzy's case, or a really interesting West Coast psychedelic album in the case of Yes. They're so distinctive, quirky and interesting that had the bands just gone on to be Milkmen, we'd still be talking about those albums, or at least fans would be talking about them. And I think had the Bond franchise failed on its first film, this would still be being shown now as, this is a brilliant lost 60s film. It's a great film.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think what the reason why we've spent so long on this one is because to understand Bond, you have to understand this film.
Yeah, and they went for the right choice as well.
I think I've got to it. That's always a thing. You want to get to it. So what we got above Dr. No?
I'm going for Spy Who Loved Me.
Well, it's one of the greatest Bond films ever made. It's definitely the greatest Roger Moore.
It's great. I mean, this is a confident Bond film. Of course, people always remember that introduction, skiing, the Union Jack flag, and the cheers that elicited. I don't know what it was like in...
That's exactly the same thing. No, he skied off the cliff. You went, oh my God, he skied off a cliff. But if you remember before that, he was in bed with a woman, wasn't he? He's in bed with a woman. The next thing, he's skiing down the mountain. The next thing... And also, the thing that's brilliant, as he's being skied down the mountain and being shot at... The disco of all disco tunes comes in. You know, it's James Bond, but it's disco. My God, we're in this world. And he comes down, goes off the cliff. Oh my, he's going to die. Oh, it's okay, he's got a parachute. And he's got the Union Jack on. It's like... And that's what I'm saying. James Bond, the only moral thing he's got is his patriotism. Yeah. And when he shows that, it's every now and then you get one of those, you know. And I love it. I think it's brilliant.
Well, it's absurd. And of course, you know, this was at a time when, let's say, cinema attendances were declining, when British culture was seemingly in decline, when certainly Britain's power globally was declining. And these films are almost some kind of comical...
At this point, yes, yeah. It's and they're going around the world. Oops! Oh my God! Sorry about that. They're going around the world. They're doing all these things around this empire that they know. And he's turning up in sort of Egypt with his white suit, and you know the old boys' clubs there. Yeah. I feel that The Spy Who Loved Me, in terms of classic scenes, may have the highest amount of classic scenes, except for Goldfinger. This just keeps delivering. If I put it on now, I go, oh, brilliant, it's the so-and-so scene. Oh, it's the brilliant, it's the so-and-so scene. You know, he's going to go to the pyramids. He's going to have the Lotus Esprit, which is even better than the Aston Martin because it goes under water. He's going to drive out the beach and he's going to wind down the window. Lotus
Esprit is submarine.
Yeah. And that bit where, you know, he drives up the beach, winds down the window, and then he puts the fish and drops out. There's no way there'd be a fish in the car. You know, how did he catch that fish? You know, and every little bit of it is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Kurt Jürgens, brilliant. That horrible black hawky thing in the sea. Yeah. Everything's amazing about Spy Who Loved Me.
It's high adventure. It's high Bond adventure. It's a lot of fun, and it's a good thriller. And it's one of those that, again, it was just right. It was on the edge of disco, and they just get the soundtrack right as well. This isn't quite chasing. It's doing it. It's a confident Bond film using the outfits of the era, bringing in the comedy, and this is obviously the debut of Jaws, and the debut of Jaws is really impressive. He's an imposing actor, Richard Keel, and doesn't this end on the train sequence? I mean, we have a lot of train sequences in Bond, for the obvious metaphor of the train sequence going through the tunnel. But yeah, I mean, it's just a hugely entertaining Bond film, a hugely entertaining late 70s cinema achievement. And it's nothing more than entertainment. But it's great at being entertaining. And I think, again, you feel that the people making... So I think Anthony Burgess might have been partly behind the screenplay for this as well. They're having fun. It's creative fun.
Yeah, I think this is the high point of the 70s Bonds for me. But we haven't had Live and Let Die yet.
Well, this is it, and it could be, you know, these could be age things as well. So I've got GoldenEye above that, because GoldenEye I went to see in London when it came out, and suddenly there was excitement after really, I would honestly say, post Moonraker, Bond's in the abyss. 15 years, I think, of just about doing box office business and still being a name. I think that Brosnan totally reinvented it. Sean Bean is very good. Sean Bean again was considered for Bond, and of course I do like the idea of, you know, name's Bond, James Bond. I'd have quite liked it. 007 could have been good, but he's obviously a Trevelyan, isn't he? He's the villain in this, and he's great. I mean, Sean Bean has got gravitas. I think he could have been a good Bond, but he's a good subtle Bond villain in this. And Brosnan is a really confident Bond, and what he does, he brings back your Connery danger, but he retains, because he also brings back your more humour. He can pull that off, which he did in Remington Steele. Yeah. So I think he's a good one, and it's a really great film. What an opening sequence, again, talking about pre-credits. This is the one with the dam and so on. It's breathtaking.
Oh, that's incredible, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course you've also got GoldenEye.
Yeah,
Tina
which
Turner.
is all right. It's really good.
Really good.
Produced, I think, by Rupert Hine. So I like, it's fantastic. So I'm all for it. I think Scott Walker, it might be in the film after that, recorded something for one of the Bond films, and it was used at the dying ends of a credit sequence, which is a real shame he never got to sing a Bond theme. But I can't really say very much about it, other than it absolutely re-establishes the franchise. And whereas Dalton's great, but he's badly served by the films, and the last few Moores, even when they're good like Octopussy, they're just not competing with Spielberg. They're not in the same league. You know, suddenly Bond has gone from the top. He's gone from Manchester United, the top of the Premier League, and he's suddenly gone to Rochdale.
Or Accrington Stanley.
And you knew it, and I was rooting for them. So, you know, I like Accrington Stanley as well, but I was rooting for the Bonds. When Brosnan comes in, it's like, good God, they've got that Etihad money that Manchester City got, and they're right back at the top of the Premier League.
So for someone who's a massive Roger Moore and Sean Connery fan, right, but doesn't know these films so well, this would be the one for me to go and watch tonight.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen this properly. I've only seen bits, but I remember the damn scene in it. I can remember the theme. I can't remember much of that about. And you've got this really high, so I'm going to go and watch this when I get home, I think.
Okay.
Yes, which is what this is all about.
Rewatching. Okay, 1969's on Her Majesty's Secret Service. This could have been higher.
Yeah, it's too low.
Again, fabulous opening sequence. They're quite understated by Bond, but of course it wins because Lazenby's a very physical Bond. He's quite charming. He's the worst Bond for me in the sense that he's not got much range as an actor, but he's got a great physical presence. And it ends, if you remember, with the line, "This never happened to the other fella."
Are they on that beach with that?
What a fantastic way to close that opening sequence. It's knowing, it's breaking the fourth wall. It's very clever, and I think this has a wonderful beginning, and it has arguably the best Bond ending
of all. Well, I think there's an argument that this is the greatest Bond. Yeah. And a lot of Bond fans feel that this is the greatest Bond. And I think what we've got is a lovely mixture between the sort of dangerous classic Bonds of the Sean Connerys and then the one with the proper story that is going to move you. And I think they did this over and over again, but with this one, it's the first time they've done it with Bond. And Bond almost... He's acting like Bond all the way through. He's still seducing all the women. He's still doing all this, but he sort of meets his match, doesn't he?
In Diana Rigg.
Yeah. And so at the end, when she's shot, and that I can remember really being upset by this. And so I feel, and also possibly the best soundtrack.
The soundtrack for this is
the best
marvellous, and it's also where he's introducing synthesizers in his colour palette. This is quite advanced, genuinely progressive music. It's a superb score, and it's got an instrumental theme tune rather than the classic song. But it does feature the wonderful Louis Armstrong, and we have all the time in the
one of
world.
the greatest songs ever written. Louis Armstrong comes in from the early 20th century New Orleans straight into a James Bond film. Can you do it, Lewis? Of course I can. I'll just do one of the greatest vocal performances ever. And it's poignant. I think I think this should be higher.
Yeah.
And so the big problem is Lazenby, who, because there's Lazenby is in a group of all of himself. You said he's the worst Bond.
Well, he's a bit like a ham in a tuxedo. But
do you think if they'd allowed him to have his own voice?
No, I'm imagining if Dalton had been given this film, it would be the greatest
Could
Bond
have been.
film.
I mean, if Sean Connery had it.
If Sean Connery had it.
If Sean Connery
But then he
had
couldn't have delivered that joke, this never happened to the other fella, which was a vital joke, in it. I think, again, it's overlong. I think the romance between him and Tracy is a bit dubious. I think Tracy's father... It's a little bit your Euro ham for me. So there are bits
that's a bit boring.
The toboggan sequence is all right, but I think Telly Savalas
brilliant
is a good villain.
Yeah.
I think the scene is very good. You've got George Baker, who was another person considered for Bond, believe it or not. And one of the things I've got to say about early Bonds, and it's particularly in Goldfinger, but actually you may or may not know this, when Lazenby's talking in the ski top, it's actually George Baker.
Yeah,
so
it's
dubbing.
Yeah, I always felt that they dubbed his voice, and so there's a stiltedness about George Lazenby, which made us think, oh, he's terrible. But I don't
the
think
dubbing's still very good. What's amazing for me is, you look at now Netflix, and they've got a South Korean or Russian film, and they'll have dubbing. It's terrible. Today, at the moment, dubbing is terrible. You watch Goldfinger, you watch on Her Majesty's Secret Service, and often they dubbed. I didn't realise this on You Only Live Twice. A lot of the Japanese actors were dubbed. I never knew until I read it. I didn't realise that Goldfinger was dubbed. It's perfect. How can you get dubbing right in 1964 and Netflix still can't get it right in 2025? So yeah, George Baker is the voice of Lazenby when he's attempting to be this thoroughbred Sir Hilary.
He does that voice. Yeah,
I like to call him Sir Hilary Swank, though I know that's not his name. It's great. And again, that haunting scene with the music when they're lulled into the dream and they're being manipulated subconsciously, which is quite a terrifying idea when you're young.
And all those different girls, all the different ladies in that place. And Bond turns up, and he's having to put on the English accent.
Yeah,
but he's like what's the phrase? He's like a fox in a chicken coop, isn't he? And he can't, and then he's having to wear a kilt. Yeah, so he's got no pants on. And then girls are right inside his leg. I mean, this is all like it's incredible
this is
stuff.
Bond at an all-you-can-eat girl buffet.
Basically, one of them's Joanna Lumley.
One of them is Joanna Lumley. And one of them, I think, went on to be a presenter of Magpie, Jenny Hanley.
Jenny Hanley's in it, yes.
I think it's a really good film. The action sequences are good. Where Lazenby delivers, he's a great physical actor. He does the fights well. He does the action scenes well.
And he looks the part.
And
they really got the look right from Sean.
Yeah.
I think it's always been one of my favourites. It's probably the one I've watched the most because I can come back to it. I like it a lot,
but I think it's overlong. There are flaws, and as you say, it might be the best for music.
Yeah.
So
let's move on.
But the ending we didn't quite say. It is the one where basically he falls in love with his equal, which is Diana Ross, Diana Rigg, again from the Avengers, and. It's very, very poignant. It's the one Bond film where you feel the thrills. And certainly as a kid, I remember feeling near tears at the end.
I did.
I know a lot of people. It's like, because you buy into his romance. Finally, good God, he's met somebody who matches his intelligence, who matches...
But don't you feel it's like Bond cannot have a wife, he cannot have a girlfriend like that, he can't fall in love. And all the way through these films, he never gets shot, If he's injured, it's just a scratch on his face. Nothing ever happens to him. And even here, nothing happens to him. But as soon as he attempts to escape from being the Bond, the mysterious Bond, as soon as he does it, he's snapped down. And it's 10 minutes of him being upset.
Yeah.
But then he gets up and he's back to being Bond.
Happens in Casino Royale as well. But Lazenby, for all my criticism of him, he delivers that final scene perfectly.
Yeah, brilliant acting.
Because she's only sleeping. And it is. As you say, it's the one Bond film that actually takes you through a very wide range of emotions. View to a Kill takes you from A to B emotionally. It takes you from A to B well, but this definitely goes from A to M at least.
Yes.
All right, now we've got No Time to Die, which actually follows on. It lives in the shadow of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, trying to pull off that trick of exciting, seat-of-the-edge Bond film and poignant romance. He's even got a daughter in this, hasn't he?
I hate this film.
Do you?
Yeah.
He even gets killed in this.
He gets killed, and there's girl Bonds being better than him, and he all starts to get all midlife crisis-y, and he all gets like he's...
Yeah.
And then he has self-loathing and self-doubt, and towards the end...
Felix Leiter gets killed again.
Yeah. I just hated it when I saw it. It's a good film, and it's made well, and it's got all... They've really tied it up well. I just don't want it to happen like that. And the thing is that in the end, when he sat there, even the way he dies is not the way Bond should die. And does he phone up his daughter or something and has a chat to her while these rockets are coming in to blow him to smithereens?
Look, you've got Remy Malek's a great villain, he's a classic villain. You've got the underground lair back.
Yeah.
Beautifully, stylishly. Yes. The score is brilliant. This one's Hans Zimmer. And he also uses melodies from On Her Majesty's Secret Service in this film. As a cinematic...
You really like this because you've got this at number... Yeah. What is it? Is this at number 5 now?
5, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
It is a great cinematic spectacle. I'm not sure about the ending myself, because I agree with you. Can you kill James Bond? There's a certain hubris that Daniel Craig feels he did Bond so well, he can kill it. Of course, it can allow Bond to be reinvented in any number of ways in the future, but
none of them that I want.
Possibly not.
None of them I want, unless they bring him back by finding all the bits and do a $6 million man on him. That's the only thing I'm going to accept.
You want an AI Bond set in the 60s?
Yeah.
With, the physicality and torso of George Lazenby.
But if they want to
get Sean Connery and the wit of Roger Moore.
Why don't they have a lady Bond? Because that's what they want, don't they? So they can have their lady Bond, but she has to go back in time to the proper Bond in the 1960s, and they can't get on because she's all modern. I mean, this is just a Spy Who Shagged Me again. Or
are you doing Life on Mars?
Yeah, I love that.
Great series. I don't know. I thought it was a great cinematic spectacle. I thought it was very well acted. I do think, your Blofeld, he's fantastic.
Well, the thing is, if they don't do anything, if that's the last Bond, I don't mind it so much. If they really did kill him off, and that's the way it wants, and he went all, woke, didn't he? Basically, towards the end. I mean, he went woke, and he died.
Didn't go broke.
And he died, and that's that. So Bond, never go woke again. Everyone else should be woke because we can all be nice people. But in terms of Bond is not nice. And if he's going to do Her Majesty's duty, I mean, now he'd be working for Charles.
He would.
And I don't think he'd be doing that. I don't think Charles is in the same league. Unless they send him off to get Prince Andrew.
That would be the plot.
Exploding Teddy.
Yeah, that's the next plot line. I think that I accept it took on board contemporary moral debates, and I thought it did it well. I think that for me, it was a classic James Bond film that managed not to be compromised despite taking on board the way in which values in the 21st century have changed.
Well, I got it before when I watched it after all the sort of, the pushback on it, and then the girl Bond sort of at some point realises that Bond is Bond. Yeah. It's not that he's not just a fool that can't be Bond anymore. I think what we've got is a crisis of storytelling. That's what we've got here. So they do a very good job in the current climate of people not being able to tell stories without having to tick a box of, a tick box of worthy points made. And I just don't think that this is why we're here talking about the Carry On films and talking about James Bond, because we know that there is still something insidious and naughty about these films. There's something that in today's climate, it's a guilty pleasure because of what it represents.
One of the things that was interesting is when I was doing a tiny bit of research for this, and I looked at the Bond films they had on Sky Movies. And in Sky Movies, they actually have ratings. And the thing that amused me, and I'm sure it'll amuse you, and it was For a View to a Kill, and actually I've got it on Blu-ray and I watched my Blu-ray version. But what was interesting was it gave it a role model rating of 1 out of 5. And then it gave
What's a role model rating?
And it gave it a morality rating of 1 out of 5. And I was very amused by that. It's like, you amuse me, Mr. Bond.
I've got to get into this. Why are they rating films like that?
They rate films on morality, role model, and I've got a 14-year-old boy and he finds it hilarious. And partly it's because this is forbidden. And if things are forbidden, you try and find your way into that forbidden world. So things like Carry On and Bond, he will often find hilarious because it's so unlike anything he's seen and so unlike anything he's told to like. But also, he instinctively knows, like you and I instinctively know, when Sid James is being a sexist in Carry On Camping, he's the idiot.
Yeah, of course
it's
he is.
Like, Warren Mitchell in Till Death Us Do Part. He's a racist, bigot, buffoon. He doesn't know it. But we know it. As an audience, we know he's a racist, bigot, buffoon. We know that Sid is desperate. And in Bond, we know it's improper to the nth degree.
Yeah.
And that's partly, it's almost like a cartoon character. It's like when the Roger Moore era ends with him in the shower with somebody who could be his granddaughter. It's like, how absurd can this get? In the next film, is he going to be with a sperm in the shower? There's something ridiculous. And intrinsically, I think people don't actually feel morally scandalised and I'm going to follow this person into purgatory. They know it's ridiculous. They know it's a fantasy.
But the thing with Bond is, if you're a woman and you go with Bond, it's going to be good sex for the lady, but also he may kill you.
Yeah.
And I don't think, and the women who are watching this, which are non-existent, I wonder whether, for the sex to be good, you've got to think that the man might kill you.
Possible. And even,
you see, and that's so. I'm being serious here. There's a danger there, which is a thrill to people who are thrill seekers, and the rest of us who aren't thrill seekers, we can live a thrill by watching James Bond, and women can watch James because they'll be back with their husbands, and their husbands are not James Bonds, but for that 2 hours, they get to see a proper man. Do you see what I'm saying? And a proper man is dangerous.
And he's even great in bed when he's had bashed testicles as well. We know this from Casino Royale. But, Yeah.
Shall we move on?
Shall we move on from that? I like it more than you, but there we go. Okay, number 4, You Only Live Twice. Second best soundtrack.
Yeah, the soundtrack's good.
Capsule in Space is wonderful. The actual soundtrack by Nancy Sinatra might be my favourite of all of them.
Donald Pleasance is without doubt the greatest Bond villain ever. And when when you copy a Bond villain, you're copying Donald Pleasance. And that scar with the wonky eyelid, that's incredible. The lair is one of the best lairs ever. It's after Thunderball, a return to bonkers Bond. It's got a much more outlandish thing. I just find that Sean Connery pretending, is he Japanese or Chinese? I can't remember which one
Japanese.
He is. Him pretending to be Japanese. I never liked that.
No.
I mean, there's the politically incorrect part, but even if you take that out of it,
It's not
He doesn't look
convincing.
like that.
No.
It's like he doesn't look like a stereotype. He looks like something really strange.
I mean, it's culturally insensitive, there's no doubt.
But he looks like a leprechaun.
Yeah, and there's cultural appropriation. I think Little Nelly gets into this one, doesn't the? And I do remember when I've done interviews with Japanese magazines, I always say that all I know about Japanese culture is from You Only Live Twice. But what's nice is they find it hilarious because they know how inappropriate and how badly done it is. The Japanese actors were overdubbed quite brilliantly. The Japanese actress, who's quite beautiful, she was the Japanese Audrey Hepburn. She was a star in Japan. I think what I like about it is pleasance, the lair, the music. Once more, again, when you have capsule in space and the two capsules colliding, there's something so haunting. That's almost poetry in motion picture. Sometimes it is just
Because we must say
art.
this, in terms of pure cinema,
Yeah.
Bonds can often be at Citizen Kane level, can't they?
Sometimes
the music coming
extraordinary.
together, the cinematography.
Or Hitchcock level.
Yeah, it's so beautiful at certain points and so full of a certain flavour.
Yeah.
You know, there's a certain way that people move within the frame. There's a way that people, the way the figures operate. You know, the way objects operate, the way technology, you know, is framed. I think cinematography. Well, anyway, my point is, from a cinema point of view, it's high cinema.
Yeah.
The Carry On films aren't.
No.
They're not. But this is, and I think one of the issues I had with this one is it's there at some points, but it's not quite as iconic because we're in the real top echelons here.
Yeah.
This is as iconic as Thunderball even, or especially Goldfinger, which is massively iconic. And I think part of it as a kid, there was a lot of blue screen.
Yeah.
There's a lot of blue screen in this one. There's a lot of the special effects are being, you know, relied on a little bit more rather than actually doing it. And I always felt there's a lot of him. Is this the one with the? It's with that little gyrocopter thing, isn't it?
Little Nelly.
Little Nelly. And there's a lot of him sat in something that doesn't look like it's up in the air.
No, I agree. You know, but I think it kind of wins courtesy of the music, courtesy of the space scenes. Pleasance is arguably the definitive Bond villain. And I think the exotic setting, this was another thing. You're talking about Britain, especially in the 60s, where very few people went abroad. So this to them was almost an introduction to the world. This is what Tokyo looks like. And as well, I think it's got one of the best beginnings. This is another where it looks like Bond is dead. And it's a very interesting sequence where he's in a bed and the bed goes into the wall, which I'd never seen anything that exotic. Did people have beds?
That's all I ever wanted when I was a kid, was have a bed that went into the wall.
I wanted a bed that went into the wall.
Yeah.
And he's machine gunned. And I'm not sure, in my mind now, I'm seeing the blood dripping from the holes. And then he's buried. You know, we get Commander Bond being buried. So it's one of the first James Bond is dead that seems very convincing when you're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You really believe he's dead. And then he reappears in a submarine outside Hong Kong, is it, I think? Hong Kong Harbour. So I think there are some great scenes. And Connery, it's a misstep. The whole Japanese section is perhaps a misstep. But he is still an icon of 60s cool in that film.
Without a doubt, yes. We are talking of classic Bonds here.
So I've got Skyfall, which I'm sure we're going to disagree with on this. I think Skyfall is to the Daniel Craig era what The Spy Who Loved Me is to the Roger Moore era. And that is, okay, we're not going to make a Bourne as a Bond. We're not going to chase them. Let's make the best James Bond film we can in the current day and age. And I think they got the acting choices right. You know, Ray Fiennes, I think Judi Dench was a very good M, but I think Ray Fiennes is equally good. And this is one where you really do feel as if MI5 is about to crumble. Is it Banderas as the villain in this one?
Yeah, I watched this quite recently, and what you've got here is a really great film, and real threat to the basic fabric of Bond and what they do.
Yeah.
And him having to come in and save the day despite, you know, he does become like the Hitchcock character, doesn't he? He's out on his own type of thing. Yeah,
Goes to his ancestral home in Scotland.
That's it. Yes, yeah. I think when I watched them all one after the other, and there was a couple I thought, this is incredible, and then they let me down. And I think this and Quantum of Solace were the two. I really like Quantum of Solace stylistically, and I like this one. And I was being pulled along by the plot, but whether that then carried on, I could have lived with that, I suppose, if that was where it went. I don't know.
It was re-establishing Bond with total confidence in the contemporary market, and I think it is a great Bond film and a great piece of cinema. It's exciting, it's emotional, and you feel the tension. As I've said, I think the acting choices are perfect for this, and the music, they're getting better. You know, Craig is becoming more and more Bond as he goes on, I think, as well.
Yes, I think that's definitely right. I noticed that when I went through them, that he was in Casino Royale he's decided to push against it. This is the new Bond, and then as it goes on, he relaxes into Bond as someone have to access Bond as an idea, because the Bond as a person is almost like disappearing in this. They all, if I can remember it, they all blend into one. But yes, you know.
Well, this is the one as well. It's got a very good contemporary story in a way, because in a sense it's a post-WikiLeaks, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, this is MI5 being destroyed by technology, and there's something very believable. Yeah, obviously Mission Impossible is doing it now with AI, and so I think it's a precursor to the latter two Mission Impossible films. So in a way, this Bond film is a Bond film that's influencing films that come after it, which you can't say about a lot of the 70s or 80s Bonds. They are failing to keep up with what's happening.
I accept your choice. I accept it. You're here as the expert. I will go back and revisit that one. This has been very useful for me. Again,
it's a long film, but I really think it's worth immersing yourself in. And the atmosphere, the music, the performance, it just gels. This is where, again, it's like, for me, Goldfinger's the third Connery. They hit it. And this is the third Craig, and it's like, we get it right, in my view.
Spy Love Me is the third more.
Yeah, you're right. That is interesting.
But I noticed that at number, because we're now on the last two, aren't we?
Yeah.
So at number 2, this is a surprising choice with what's gone before. You've got Live and Let Die at number 2.
All right, Live and Let Die. I've got to come clean on this one. My parents were in classic 70s style, constantly having affairs and breaking up and so on. My mum took me to London for the weekend. I was 10. And I saw the Live and Let Die posters, and she knew I was mad on Bond, and I would not let her rest. And the film had only just opened. And we went to Leicester Square, and I'm hoping people can tell me whether this was normal, but we were at Leicester Square Odeon, where it premiered, and she had to buy cinemas at an inflated price. There was somebody going, right, we've got tickets here at this price, tickets here at that price. I've never been in that situation before. And then, of course, as an insistent 10-year-old, I made her buy the programme. She didn't even like the films, but she took me there. You know, it's this weekend away to escape my father. And I then forced her to watch Live and Let Die. And I was open-mouthed with delight, because I loved The Saint, so I knew more. I thought he was a great choice. And the theme tune, Live and Let Die, Paul McCartney and Wings, because the Beatles were one of the few pop bands I liked as a kid, so to hear McCartney do the tune, and it's such an epic, sprawling masterwork. This is a miniature prog masterpiece.
I mean, this is totally right. I love the Beatles, but Live and Let Die is better than any Beatles song.
Live and Let Die, Beatles could have become.
Yeah, it's like, it's insane. There's so much in there, and again, it's like Paul McCartney's songwriting style has been made better because it's got the danger of Bond in there, and so it doesn't have that trite, you know, Silverhammer type.
The lyrics are nonsense. Just you take this away. The lyrics are not Philip.
But it's genius songwriting.
It's wonderful songwriting.
I mean, the orchestral bits.
Yeah.
That's not James Bond. That's not James Bond. But we go, oh, that's James Bond.
Yeah.
I don't know. They put it off.
He redefines the James Bond, and I think Martin's arrangement, because Martin's at the score for this. John Barry couldn't do it for some reason, and George Martin does an excellent job, and he drags the Bond themes into the era of blaxploitation and funk. Now this, you could argue, it's slightly chasing the pack, except 73 really was the year for blaxploitation, so they're in the middle of it.
They're right in the middle of it,
They're right in the heart
And
of
it also goes beyond. It's got voodoo in there. It's got all sorts of things in there. And they mess with it, and it's so strange. I mean, no blaxploitation has a voodoo sort of priest that seems to be indestructible and
Baron
immortal.
Samedi is terrifying.
Yeah.
As a kid, he's particularly terrifying. James Seymour is bewitching.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. You are right, it is an amazing film.
She's this ingenue, and there's something about her. And I remember seeing her in an episode of The Double Deckers beforehand and being enchanted, and she's enchanting in this because she's otherworldly. She's just right.
And this has also got the greatest line of any James Bond film. Names is for tombstones.
Baby. Does he
which is Bond coming down. My name's Bond, James Bond.
Well, this is a Bond film that you've got to, in a sense, throw logic out of the window. It's got a great opening sequence with the New Orleans Dixieland burial scene where one of the agents is killed. So great opening sequence.
You are right here. Now I'm thinking about it. And it's got that Diamonds Are Forever. We're in the 70s and everything doesn't make sense anymore.
Exactly.
It's hallucinogenic.
But it's hilarious. What's hilarious about this is I love it because Yaphet Kotto is a wonderful,
amazing actor,
great villain as both Mr. Big and the politician. He pulls off both roles perfectly. And his death, is that the one that's the...
They stick those things that explode inside him and he blows up like a great big leather settee, doesn't he? He goes up against the roof and explodes.
That is an iconic death. And I think that what I do like, Moore plays it seriously and he's out of time, so this is more in the funky Harlem of the early 70s, and of course he's like a secret agent from 50s Britain. He's almost like something that's been dragged in from an Ealing comedy in Harlem.
You're right, and then we haven't mentioned the motorboat.
Oh, there's
the motorboats. That is probably my favourite action sequences.
The crocodile sequence.
The crocodile, all of that. And I can remember when they're coming out of the water and going across the land and back in, and I can remember saying to my dad, you can't do that. And my dad goes, they're jet boats. Right. Because what's a jet boat? Because it hasn't got a propeller on the back, it's pulling the... So when it comes out, it's got the trajectory, there's no thing at the... What, so they can really do that? Yeah, they are really doing that. What they really do, I can remember this conversation with the city. They're really doing that. And then, is this the one with the sheriff in as well? It's the first appearance. There's the first appearance, isn't it? And he does crop up later, doesn't he? But the sheriff's one of the great James Bond characters. I don't know why, he's just brilliant. It's all Smokey and the Bandit suddenly, isn't it?
Yeah, but they pull it off because the overall film works. It's thrilling, it's scary, it's funny, it's ridiculous. And I quite like the idea, because actually going back to one of your points, which I'd not thought of before, is that Diamonds Are Forever. It's Bond trying to compete in this conspiratorial early 70s. And you could argue that actually Skyfall, this is the whole nature of Bond in an era of the internet. How does this figure exist in this era of history when every value it stood for in the 60s has been trashed? And I think it's kind of, interesting what you're saying, but it's because he plays it just as this cold killer, this ridiculous womanizer, because again, one of the opening sequences, remember, he has the magnetic watch that pulls down. He's using Q's inventions in a way that Q did not really intend. Was it Madeline Smith as his first conquest? I'm not sure.
Yes, she's
a very 70s.
Yeah, one of the great 70s actresses.
And also with this film, why I like it, it's one of the few Bonds that never overstays its welcome. I think it's one of the shortest Bond. Of course, somebody's probably going to correct me and say it's actually 3.5 hours. But if it is,
it just shows how great it is. You are right. This is brilliant.
No, it's a sinewy, muscly Bond that just goes from one scene to another scene to another scene to another scene. And obviously, we've got New Orleans. We've got, again, this America, this vivid technical America of the early 70s, which was so exotic, I think, if you're living in Warrington in 1973.
I think with this one, it's almost got, rather than aping... martial arts films like Man with the Golden Dawn, what this does is it just wholeheartedly goes to whole genres and back in. A Spy Love Me does this as well. You'll get a moment where they'll be riding across the desert. You know, they're in Egypt, but they're on horses, and they've got
Lawrence of Arabia.
and then it does all that. And this one does that brilliantly. And I think it goes beyond a normal Bond. And a lot of these characters are absolutely fantastic in themselves. You know, and you want to. It's not what Bond normally does, but you want to follow it because there's these things going on all the way through.
And it's the perfect collision of 70s music with 70s Bond and the 70s sexual attitudes. And of course, you know, you do have, always in Bond, I think sometimes there is an aspect of feminine power, and I don't think Bond is ever a racist. You know, obviously Bond sleeps with women of any variety in the films.
And that's the only way you could gauge if he's a racist.
Yeah, I think so.
I think so, yeah, there's no other way.
At all. And in this film, the black actors carry the bulk of it. They're the serious actors. Yaphet Kotto is an amazing powerhouse performer. So they're given almost equal billing, equal importance, equal intensity, but more plays it. And I think partly because he is almost like this, as I've said, 50s Ealing Bond thrown into a world that's so different.
Well, you're right about the Saint.
Yeah.
Because everyone had come through the Saint. I mean, we were still watching the black and white Saint in the 70s, I remember. So I got it as well. But the Saint is quintessentially English. It's a certain type of, almost like bulldog Drummond type of hero.
Yeah.
So they've taken that and transferred it into Bond. And, I mean, Roger Moore's never dangerous like Sean Connery, but he's very funny.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we love about those Bonds.
Well, he's funny, and I think this is as lean and mean as he gets in some ways. I mean, there are scenes, as we said, in Octopussy and Spy Who Loved Me, where he can be quite serious, but this one, there's a hunger. I think there's a hunger in the film, there's an excitement, and it just doesn't seem to have many wasted seconds. You know, one of the things I can say, that even with the Bonds I love, Skyfall, Casino Royale, there aren't only wasted seconds, there are wasted 10-minute sequences where you're waiting for something to move the plot on or move the character on. This, it doesn't, it just jumps and jumps. And I said, you know, this Harlem of the 70s is so evocative, this Florida of the 70s is so evocative. And it's a really interesting storyline. It's not a classic cliched smirch.
No, yes, I think that's, you're right. I think that you've put a good argument in for that.
So number one, we'll go to
someone among us.
Well, if you know what's happening at the moment, you're better informed than I am, but when I know what's happening, I should doubtless be told, and I shall pass that information on to you. Meanwhile, I can tell you that we have an hour of classic comedy with Morecambe and Wise in a few moments' time. Then after that, we have The Equalizer, starring Edward Woodward, and it's a seasonal story at 9 o'clock. 10 o'clock is the time we go over to ITN for the news. And then we have a programme with the great American soprano, Jessie Norman, who will be singing carols. So those are the programmes we have for you this evening here on Thames. Then we begin Through the Night on Thames at 11:30 with a Continental movie. Meanwhile, I'm told we've still got a few moments to pass before Morecambe Wise, so I can tell you about tomorrow night if you like. Well, whether you like or not, I'm still going to tell you. We've got Crossroads at 6:35. After that, The Headliners at 7 o'clock. That's introduced, of course, by Derek Jameson. Now, I'm glad to tell you we can return to our normal transmission.
Just look at them. They must be crackers. A double-decker bus could be right on top of them and they'd never even see it. Hey, you must be out of your tiny minds.
If you don't get over to my new channel right now, The Magic Box, and subscribe, go on, what are you waiting for?